Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Today's breaking news continues as the Free Russian Army is rapidly advancing onto Belgorod, and we now have information that the Free Russian Army has most likely made it to the very outskirts of the city of Belgorod as of only a few hours ago. With the sounds of firefights and heavy artillery barrages coming from the very edges and fringe parts of the city, we know that one unit of the Free Russian Army has been able to make it at least to the area of the 14K3 highway and are beginning to engage Russian forces around this area. We were able to hear the sounds of explosions coming from the city today as the citizens of Belgrade prepared for the battle that was now reaching their city. The severity of the barrage that we were hearing right there leads us to believe that it is another MLRS barrage being conducted by the Free Russian Army against the Russian border guard forces and Russian forces as a whole that may be within the city of Belgorod. We have a reason to believe that the Free Russian Army is attempting to either create an encirclement of the city at the moment or to possibly conduct some light urban warfare and still conduct, for the majority, an encirclement of the city. This was not the only clip that we were able to get, letting us hear the explosions and sounds of the happenings inside of downtown Belgrade. There was another clip that was released by a Russian citizen who showed that an explosion occurred not that far away from him on film, and it once again shown that the city of Belgrade is now under a bombardment by the Free Russian Army, which is continuing to advance onto the city. Here's the clip of this Russian citizen recounting his story of what happened.
Бак течет. Тут пиздец, я, блядь, еле ушел с-под удара, нахуй. Вот, блядь, туда, вон, въебало. Смотрите, на педколледже, нахуй. Уебало, блядь. Этого, блядь, волною, нахуй, сюда, вот, сзади, вот, у 48-го, блядь. Я, блядь, его еле обвильнул, нахуй. И сюда, вправо, блядь. Пизда вообще, мужики, ебать. Я подохуел. А тут пиздец. Я с этого еле ушел, блядь, от этой машины, блядь. А тут люди, пиздец. Ебать, мужики, пиздец. Тихо. Блядь. Бля, мужики.
And from what we can tell, once again, it seems as though the city is being bombarded across its entirety, as this area, we were able to find, is more to the northern side of Belgrade. And if this was once again another MLRS barrage, this means that the Free Russian Army is far closer than we ever expected, as the city of Belgrade is actually a fairly wide one, nearly being about 8 to 9 miles in width. That means for a BM-21 Grad-style MLRS to be able to fire from one side of Belgrade city to the other, they would practically have to be already in the outskirts of Belgrade or just outside of Belgrade's outskirts to be able to fire a rocket this far into the city and into this area. Once again, showing us that there is a very high belief that there has to be a Free Russian Army contingent that may have made it as far north as Rosmano, although we cannot confirm that right now due to operational security reasons. They are very close to the interior of Belgrade city and are finally making it into the outskirts. We also got to see more explosions occurring on the very outskirts of the city once again and got to hear the sounds of that in this very short clip. That clip ending right there, and once again confirming that the city is practically under a mass bombardment as of the past 6 to 8 hours. Moving on from that and into the area of Shebekino, we were also able to see that a fire has broken out in Shebekino, as it appears that the Russian border guards are starting to return fire with light artillery against the Free Russian Army and starting to cause some damage to the surrounding settlements. From what we understand, the town of Shebekino is currently under the control of the Free Russian Army, and so any damage that may be incurred inside of the town is to be assumed from the opposite side, the Russian border guard forces, or any additional forces that may be in the area. Although at the moment we only believe it to be the Russian border guard forces. We can see the clip of the fire billowing out of this building here after the artillery hit.
Там что-то шипит, Витя, оно постоянно там шипело.
And once again showing us that the situation is quite serious. It is so serious, as a matter of fact, and apparently going in the Free Russian Army's way So well that the Free Russian Army is actually asking for Putin to directly talk to them about some kind of a resolution. According to what the Free Russian Army has said today, they said that Putin should stop the circus, quote unquote, and communicate with them through any available means. The way that we think they want to communicate for is because they want the Russian government to possibly give concessions or maybe even start to talk about creating some kind of an autonomous republic out of Belgorod or Kursk. We don't really have an exact idea of what they would talk about if Putin does reach out to them and talks to them on some official or unofficial channel, but this is certainly a massive move, and once again showing that the Free Russian Army is in a very good position at the moment, as they are now openly talking about having Putin speak with them. We can also see the leader of the Russian Volunteer Corps right here in this clip also saying the same thing. We can also see, interestingly enough, that there is a representative of the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Siberia Battalion here on the right side, and also the Freedom of Russia Legion here on the left, pretty much representing most of the major armed forces that comprise the Free Russian Army. Interestingly enough, another thing that we can notice is that this Siberian Battalion member here actually has an MG5 machine gun provided by the Germans, specifically made by H&K. And this gives us an idea that while the Free Russian Army is almost entirely equipped with Soviet vintage vehicles and really any kind of vehicle-based weaponry, it appears that some of their small arms are in fact Western provided, as the MG5 is a German service machine gun, or a light machine gun that is currently in German military service. The fact that they have been so confident and so bold as to already start talking about having negotiations with Putin very clearly lets us know that the Free Russian Army is expecting on taking Belgorod probably within the next days, maybe within the next week or two, if nothing changes drastically in this area. We have still not seen the mobilization of any Rosguardia forces or the Russian regular army being sent into the area, and so from what we understand, the under-equipped and undermanned Russian border guard forces under the control of the FSB, or the Russian Internal Security Service, is still the only ones attempting to try and hold down the entire oblast. Lightly equipped with practically very little artillery and really no armor, they pose very little of a chance in succeeding in open firefights against the Free Russian Army, and it seems as though, from what we're seeing on our frontline analysis and battle reports, that would be a very accurate statement, as we have not seen the Free Russian Army's advance get slowed at all. The Free Russian Army is advancing in all directions at this point at an approximated 6 to 7 miles per day, which is very fast by military standards, some of the fastest advances being seen on the Western Front in World War II being nearly 10 to 15 miles a day, giving a perspective that, at least in a modern Ukrainian sense, these advances by the Free Russian Army are quite rapid and appearing to take a very large amount of ground. If we were to go off of the 36-hour ago report where we thought the front line may be, and we added an additional 6 miles to that, that means that the Free Russian Army is probably in Razmino if their speed and pace has not been slowed down by moving through an urban area or through anything else. We also believe that the forces in the Gryvron area are apparently doing quite well, although they may be running into some slightly larger obstacles than the Free Russian Army advance in the Shebekino front, as it appears that the city of Gryvron has come under Russian shelling, possibly suggesting that the Free Russian Army is still in the town, and we haven't really gotten a lot of an indication that they've moved forward. The reason why we believe that the Free Russian Army has not moved forward in the area of Gryvron is just a few miles north and east towards Antonovka is a massive nuclear weapons storage facility for the Russian Army. We have not heard about this facility being taken over, and we've not seen any evidence of the Free Russian Army being able to capture this position or the town of Golovchino, which is directly just south of the nuclear weapons storage site. And so from what we know, the Free Russian Army is somewhere in between Gryvron and Golovchino at the moment, and have not been able to overtake the town of Golovchino or take the nuclear weapons storage facility. Beyond that, however, we can see that the Russian border guards are attempting to shell the town of Gryvron and possibly inflict casualties on the Free Russian Army that's currently there, or maybe just a little bit further up the road. We don't really know why the advance on the western flank in the Gryvron front is progressing slower than the one near the Shebekino direction, and also what is a little bit concerning about that is that if the Free Russian Army is attempting to take Belgorod from both sides, The Western Front, the Griveron Front, has to cover a lot more ground to be able to make it towards the city of Belgrade than the Shebekino Front really has to. This front in particular has to travel all the way up towards Tomarovka, and from our estimated current frontline positions, that is an advance of nearly 25 miles, meaning that if they're advancing around 5 to 6 miles a day, this could take them anywhere in between 5 to 6 days to try and complete, moving at full speed without any impediments along the way, which at the moment it does appear that there is some kind of an impediment near the Antonova-Golovchino areas. They're not advancing rapidly like the Eastern Front is in Shebekino. We are still assuming, however, that the situation is fairly positive in this area, and the Free Russian Army is achieving what they're expecting. Otherwise, these talks with Putin would be a little bit odd, or at least the attempts at talks with Putin would be incredibly odd. But at the same time, while the Free Russian Army is demanding that there be talks with Putin, the Russian government has gone completely silent. Probably because Putin is currently hoping to try and see if there is a way to just quietly let this disappear and see if the Free Russian Army's occupation of Belgorod and Kursk will only be temporary instead of a long-term embarrassment to the Russian Federation. At the exact same time, the election was also wrapping up, and we got to see that there were armed soldiers inside of some of the polling stations checking on who was voting the right way. This clip right here shows a Russian FSB member or a Russian soldier going into the actual polling booths and checking the papers to see that they were marking the correct candidate, that being Putin. We see this right here. And once again, this guy is not looking at the actual citizen here. He's looking straight down at his ballot and making sure that he's checking the right boxes for the right candidates. Once again, showing that the Russian election is wildly unfair, and we know that Putin is going to win by a landslide. But by how much? That's a great question. And I wonder, how much of a percentage do y'all think Putin is going to win? We know that it's going to be greater than 50%, but is it going to be in the 60th percentile, the 70th percentile, the 80s, the 90s? Is he going to win 100% of the vote pretty much at 99.7 or something along those lines? Let me know in the comments section below if you think Putin is going to win, and when he wins, how much is he going to win by? Because that's something that we were actually talking about a lot before this news even came out today, is how much is Putin actually going to win by, everything considered. We know that right now, because of the Free Russian Army invading the Kursk and Belgorod oblasts, as well as the attacks on the oil refineries in Russia, and the stagnant war in Ukraine, there's a very big reason to stuff the ballot boxes and to try and make it look like Putin is winning by a large margin. It may buy the Russians a little bit of time publicly, where the Russian public thinks that maybe they're just the only person that doesn't really like Putin that much. Maybe everyone else in the Russian Federation really does like him and wants to see his leadership continue. But at the exact same time, his leadership may be coming to a very quick end here in the near future, as the Ukrainians have struck another 3 oil refineries overnight and knocked out an additional 10% of the Russians' ability to produce refined fuels. This means now that almost a quarter of all Russian refined fuels and their ability to produce these fuels on a given basis has been completely knocked out, meaning that now the Russian Federation is at a deficit of nearly 600 to 700,000 barrels per day of usable oil that could be used by the military or the public. This also means that they are probably going to be eating up their strategic oil reserves rapidly, and those may be dwindling here within the next few months. Here's one of the clips showing the explosion at an oil refinery from a Ukrainian drone attack. We got many other clips. This was just one clip from one of the 3 oil refineries that exploded today, but there is loads of footage coming out. Here's an additional clip showing another oil refinery having been hit, and of course in a ball of flames. The drone attack being wildly successful in knocking out this refinery as well. And in the next clip, we can also see another oil refinery that was hit in the Samara region and is also a roaring inferno as well. The Russian Federation consumes about 3.6 million barrels of oil per day, and the amount of refined oil products that the Russian Federation can produce domestically is roughly around 3.7 million. Meaning that with about 22 to 23% of all Russian oil refinery production knocked out, that means that they are at a deficit of hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil per day. This also means that the Russian Federation will be running into some very short-term issues, either supplying fuel to the public, probably with prices rapidly increasing, or they'll have to start rationing the fuel that they're providing to the Russian armed forces, which will greatly limit their abilities inside of Ukraine, and also their abilities to deploy forces into different regions such as Belgorod to deal with the advancing Free Russian Army. This is a massive deal, and while Russian oil refineries getting hit is always incredible to see, and the footage is always impressive to watch a massive refinery on fire, the actual impact that it has on this war is probably more important at this point than the actual frontline battles that are occurring inside of Ukraine or in Belgorod in Kursk at the moment. Without the ability to have fuel, it is very difficult for a modern military to operate. The logistics requires fuel to run their supply trucks, and the frontline units require fuel to keep their tanks and armored personnel carriers rolling and operational. If that fuel runs out, or if that fuel is greatly limited in supply, that means that less vehicles at any given moment can run, and therefore the amount of firepower or the amount of action that the Russian army can engage in at any single given moment is greatly reduced because they simply don't have the ability to even move forward to the area where the fighting is at and continue to keep it going. This is probably one of the biggest and most influential things that we'll be seeing happening over the war in Ukraine for the next few months. And if the Ukrainians can continue to knock out Russian oil refineries and even knock out as high as 30 to 40% of all Russian refinery production inside of the Federation, we may see that the war's end will be coming fairly soon just due to a complete lack of fuel to even keep the military and the nation running. But with that, that is all of the breaking news that we have today. I got to thank everyone so much once again for watching this. If you did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Link in the description below. And I'd also like to give a huge shout out and a thanks to all of the patrons who help to make these video projects possible and also help us to do everything else on this channel. If you want to see some more in-depth battle analysis in written form, you can join our Patreon. Sometimes I'm putting some battle reports out there in much greater and more in-depth detail than I can really do on a stream or a video here on YouTube. So if you'd like to hear a little bit of that, make sure to go over there because it's fairly interesting stuff, and it seems like it's reaching some very good acclaim at the moment. But nevertheless, thank you all once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.